Good morning. Happy Sunday. I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday weekend. And so, if you're joining live, thank you for getting up early on a Sunday, especially my West Coast, my California followers. And I want to bring you on the path that Sophie Twinkle Star and I walked just shy of 9 years when I bought the house in 2016 in this neighborhood. Before I even moved in, I searched high and low for a path that would help Sophie relax. She was not an urban dog. She did not like streets like this. And this is why I didn't start the event from my house to this location. She wasn't happy. She was content as the years went on. It wasn't her happy place. So I have her with me right here. She's with us. So I am going to start you now on the journey. Here we go. Normally I would have a light, but I can't hold everything. Phone, her little, and there went a bunny. I don't know if you could see, it's there, the little cottontail. She had such a gentle spirit with the bunnies. They would come up so close, and I'm sure that those that followed the page would see how close she was able to get with them. I always found that amazing. So this was her bush. We'd stop here, she'd stop here, because this gentleman created this pole for her and I. 2 years ago, as some of you may recall, we had a pack of coyotes that just were relentless, and they even sent, I guess, what's called a scout to come and get way too close to her. And so I shared that with that gentleman, and next thing you know is he created this pole. So yes, I'm going to be a little bit out of breath, and mainly it has to just do with emotions. But anyways, so we would come down this path here, and I'd be telling her slow, because she knew as we got closer that she was about ready to hit the trail over there. Her nose would go active here because of bunnies and coyotes and community cats and other dogs. So while I'm walking, I want, for those that are not familiar with her backstory, let me give you her backstory. And it started December of 2012. It was right before Christmas. Sorry, I dropped something. And I'm out walking Mr. Magoo, Carla May, and Minnie Me. And I round the corner, and for just to back it up, I lived in San Jose, California at that time. As I round the corner, here comes a very thin pit bull dog. And I'm stopping here because I would check this way just to make sure all was clear. And then this would be her spot. And then I check that way to make sure the coast is clear. And I'd come over here, and I'd shine the light down in the canal just to make sure everything was clear and there no little beady eyes that looked threatening. There were beady eyes, trust me. Anyways, so I'm not gonna lie, in 2012, I knew nothing about pit bulls, nothing. And I was one that stereotyped and had that stigmata against them, and I was frozen in fear. And she kept coming. Mr. Magoo and Minnie Me weren't having it. No. They wanted to tear her apart. And she kept coming and coming, and Carla May just very gently and very calmly walked up to her, and then it began. That journey. I tried to pet her, reach out to her, and she ran off. So we went on our walk. About an hour later, I looked behind me, and she's trailing. And so then I was like, okay, I got to get her off the street. And I spent about an hour trying to get her, and it just wasn't working. And I had a lot of meetings that day, and I was texting and sending emails like, I'm going to need to reschedule. There's this dog I have to rescue. I don't know why. I can't tell you. It's a pit bull of all dogs. Don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out. So about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, neighbor comes out and says, I see you trying to get that dog. We've been feeding it scraps. It lives down there in the homeless camp. And the homeless camp was across the street. And I went over into the field across the street, and sure enough, there she is. About that time, animal control comes up, San Jose Animal Control. And they stop and they're like, you all right? You have everything under control? And I'm like, well, I'm all right. I don't know if I have everything controlled, but I'm trying to get her. So they suggested I go get a stinky food. Off to tuna I go get, come back, and I opened it up, and she would show interest, but she wouldn't come at all close to me. Now, about this time, it's about between 4 and 6 p.m., and it's dark out. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take these guys out for one last walk in the evening around the little complex, because I lived in a townhouse. And anyone that isn't familiar with California townhouses, you might as well say it was a shoebox. I opened the door, and there she was standing at my front door, and then quickly ran off. So what I did is I put the little ones there back in the kitchen, put a gate cross, got some kibble, and those that have went out to the my YouTube channel, Real Dogs Don't Whisper, and looked at her playlist, the very first photo, I was able to catch a very quick shot or recording of her putting her nose inside the doorway to grab some kibble. But she wouldn't come in. So I had this, for a lack of better term, courtyard, a yard, California style yard. And I opened the gate and I threw all sorts of kibble on that courtyard. And I hid behind the gate. And when she got in, just in far enough, I closed the gate and I had her. And she was petrified. So I opened the interior garage door, and then she slowly came in. And then the second video, her playlist, you see that I eventually got her in the kitchen, and she was so exhausted that she was just falling asleep standing up. And so I let her stay the night, but I knew I couldn't keep her. So this is what we do. We kind of look around, make sure that everything's copacetic here in the canal. And unfortunately, I had to call animal control the following morning. And it broke my heart. And again, naive, back in 2012, county shelters I didn't realize were high kill. Didn't know that. Do now. And I know so much more about everything. Called wisdom, I guess. And they came and they got her. And I'm crying. And I called my friend Carol, who we are still very good friends to this day. And I'm bawling my eyes out. And I just told her, I'm like, Carol, there's something about this dog. I can't explain. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know. But I just can't let her stay in there. I don't know what to do. I can't get her. I have nowhere to keep her. Unbeknownst to me, she had amazing connections. There goes the owl. That owl's always with Sophie and I when we're out here. Oh my goodness. And some of you saw that video, how close her and I were able to get to the owl. And again, I can't believe how close she would get to the owl, the falcons out here, the bunnies. Okay, back to the story. So, unbeknownst to me, she had a strong network at Humane Society Silicon Valley, and she was making phone calls. And she calls me Christmas Eve. And she says, "Merry Christmas." And I'm like, "Yeah, Merry Christmas." And she says, No, Merry Christmas." I'm like, "Okay, Merry Christmas." She said, "What's one Christmas gift that you really, really want?" Well, hello. Let's see. My list is only 10 miles deep. And I just said, "I don't know. Humor me." And she said, "You know that dog you rescued?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh, did the owner located her?" No, she said. "I made some phone calls and Humane Society of Silicon Valley's pulling her out tomorrow." I'm like, "What?" They're like, "Yep, she's getting pulled." And sure enough, she got pulled. And I actually have along here some paperwork from December 25th, 2012 of her intake. And so her journey began. Little did I know that it was our journey. So on December 25th, 2012, she was pulled out of county, which now I know is a high kill shelter, and taken to the Humane Society of Silicon Valley. And I owe her team there, and Jerry, if you're listening, I owe you a world of love for believing her. And Barb, I'm about ready to share our story. So at the beginning of the new year, Sophie was given a foster mom named Barb. Her name's Barb. And I was calling her Twinkle Star. And a fun little trivia fact that many don't know, I almost named her Spirit. Don't know why, but there was something about her spirit, that it just seemed befitting. Then when I saw the markings on her chest, I named her Twinkle Star, because the stars were out when I was able to get her in my courtyard and close that gate. And they were twinkling, and so all that came together like that. So she went into foster care with Barb. And then I got a call or an email, I can't remember, from Humane Society asking if I'd be interested in helping Barb and Jerry and the rest of her team rehab her. And would I bring Carla May, since Carla May was so instrumental in the rescue. Absolutely. And some of you saw the first video, which to this day, I am ever so grateful for Carol, because Carol came to almost every visit with her and recorded and documented. And never in my wildest dreams would I think those videos would mean so much to her team, even today. And so then her journey began. And then it was decided that to help Sophie grow more in socialization, Barb and I would co-foster Sophie. Now, how Sophie got her name is because Barb liked the name Sophie. I liked the name Twinkle Star. And so she became sophisticated with 3 names. Sophie Twinkle Star. Just the way she was supposed to be. And we did this for almost a year. And it was sort of like co-parenting. Weekends, some weekends, it was mainly weekends with me, every other weekend, or when Barb had a trip that Sophie wasn't able to come with, then I would keep her. Unfortunately, remember, I'm still in a small townhouse, and at this point, she's a puppy. She's puppy, and yeah, little townhouse with 0 yard, it was just not conducive. And then fast forward, I received a job opportunity to come to Arizona and work with PetSmart. And that meant I had to leave California. They would not entertain me working remote. I'm stopping here for several reasons. This would be our mid-stop, Monday through Friday, just because I had to get back to work. And then during the summer, some of you saw the videos that I would stop and we'd have a water break, and she was always drinking out of that bowl. The other reason I'm stopping here, the birds are coming up or starting to sing. And right here is when I always look down at her and go, Sophie, the birds are singing to you. They're saying, good morning, Sophie Twinkle Star. We love you from near and far. Good morning, Sophie Twinkle Star. You are perfect just the way you are. And she looked up at me. Oh my gosh, look. Can you see it? Oh my gosh, the owl's back. Nope, that's a hawk. That's the hawk that some of you saw that she'd get so close to as well. That's not the owl. And she'd look up to me and nudge me. I'm like, yep. And then I tell her that she's my coyote slayer. Now, for those that are listening, please understand, she never caught a coyote. She would have never hurt a coyote. Quite the opposite. She looked at them as other dogs and wanted to play. She loved it when I gave her a job. And that's why I was named her Coyote Slayer. I'm like, all right, come on, Sophie. You're my Coyote Slayer. Come on, let's go. You protect us. Her little tail would get up. Right about here, on weekends and holidays when I didn't have to rush back for meetings, I would take her leash off. I'd take this off. And I turn it off because sun's rising, and there she'd go. We would do off-leash work. Okay, so back to her timeline. I had to leave to accept the opportunity at PetSmart, and I arranged a day and a time, and Carol was with me again. Thank you, Carol, to go and tell Sophie Twinkle Star that I was leaving and that she was always in my heart, and she's got this. She's going to find an amazing family, and that she was to be good, and trust, and just trust, and it will be okay. And I left. February 12th. Well, actually, I looked back on these emails. It was February 10th. I get an email from Barb that Jerry's going to be reaching out to me to discuss a few things. February 12th, I get a phone call from Jerry. And Sophie wasn't doing well. At one point, Sophie was staying with Jerry because they wanted to continue the socialization and broaden her net, cast that net far and wide, to help her find her forever home. And unfortunately, there was a moment where she and Jerry, I apologize if I have the wrong label, boyfriend, significant other, partner, at any rate, she lunged at him, and Jerry was concerned. At the same time, there was another family that was considering her, and the gentleman, of all things, because she was afraid of men, was a runner, and he was doing amazing work with her. Unfortunately, his wife was not comfortable around her, knowing the history. And I got the phone call with Jerry, and I was asked, did I want to come back and say goodbye to her? But at this point, I didn't know all the details. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she found her family? Are you kidding me? Yeah. And Jerry's like, no. We've done everything, and she's not molding out to what we had hoped for. And unfortunately, we have to make this tough decision. And I'm like, no. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. I just asked Jerry, I said, may I have 24 to 36 hours to noodle on this? And Jerry said yes. I called my sister and said, I don't know. I feel as though I need to go get her, but my life is going to significantly change, that I'm going to have to put her on hold. And like, if you and my nephews and niece wanted to come, I don't know, to visit, I don't know how that'll work. And Colleen, that's my sister, she's just like, Kelly, you got this. I support you. You've been there from day one with her. Day one. This is something you need to go do. You can't just let this happen. Made another call. Carol. Now, Carol was always there with the rehab. She saw Sophie starting to flourish and develop. Her husband even was instrumental in trying, hand feeding. Sophie wasn't comfortable with that because, again, he was a gentleman, and that male presence wasn't going to happen. And Carol's like, you know what? You've come so far with her. This is something you need to do. Made the phone call back to Jerry, and I said, okay, I'm coming for her. May we meet halfway, California, Arizona. It was agreed, only under one condition. If Sophie didn't recognize me, she was heading back to California. And, well, as most of you saw that reunion video, that wasn't a problem. She recognized me. Yes, I'm still doing off-leash work right here with her. Every now and then, she'd linger back. She caught a scent. I walk this way. I'm like, come on, Sophie, let's go, let's go. Summertime, she'd walk. Can't blame her here in Arizona. The heat would be like, ugh. But right about now, this is the season when she just full steam ahead. So, got her, drove back to Arizona with her, walk in the door, mini-me, fancy, Mr. Magoo and Carla May was like a beat was never missed. And she never missed them. It was just like, oh, hey, I was just out for a walk. I'm back. Did you miss me? Did you miss me? Okay, let's play, let's play. When I say that she was my fountain of youth, I kid you not. That girl's energy level, unbelievable. Yeah, that was her hawk. You see that there's a trail over there? That wasn't really her fave. This was her favorite. And we'd walk on weekends, like I said, and I'd have her off leash, and she'd be either right here at my side, this side, slightly behind, running, bringing up the rear. Got her here to Arizona. And at that time, I was living in a rental, and the owners wanted their house back. So I had to find another home to live in, and I rented that and found that in 2015. In 2015 is when all heck broke loose with her health. Some of you may recall, I almost lost her twice in 2015 and once in 2016. She stopped eating and took her to the vet. We ran all sorts of tests. And right around that point, before this all happened, she was an easy 59, 60 pounds. When she stopped eating and I took her in, she dropped about 50. All tests were clear. Her blood work was perfect. No indication of anything that would be like, okay, we can treat this. Came back a few weeks later, and she dropped down to 40 pounds. And at this point, her GI system was a wreck. So we treated for IBD. And that worked until it didn't. And that was only about for a week, maybe 2 weeks. Back in. They tested for HGE, which is another type of disorder, and it's fatal. because I was explaining the stools in the backyard, and basically it was a mess. That came back negative. Tested her for pancreatitis, negative. And now this is months into this, and we've ran every test. And I tell you this too, we ran valley fever tests nonstop, and every test came back negative. And so they said, okay, we'll put her on some anti-inflammatories. Now I'm in 2016 at this point. So this is 2015 through 2016. And we're battling to keep her alive because she's dropping weight and not eating. And just like we're stumped. And so 2016 comes and her left leg no longer can use it. She was holding her left leg up like a chicken wing. And so we decided that we had to get in there. X-ray showed that her patella was destroyed. Like bone was just eaten away. And we scheduled the TPLO surgery, which not cheap. She became $1 million dog, literally, figuratively, and from the heart as well. And the day of the surgery, I said to the vet, I said, look, there's this lump. It's not soft. It's hard. It's weird. I don't know. And he said, okay, we'll remove it. And hold on, I'm trying to get some stuff here I want to get out that's going to honor. And he said, I don't think it's anything. It doesn't appear to be cancerous. But do you want to go ahead and biopsy it? I'm like, at that point, after the TPL surgery, you spend that much money on that kind of surgery? What's another $300 for a biopsy? And I said, absolutely. Best decision I ever made. And the biopsy results came back, and he said, you're not going to believe this. I don't believe it. We're all stumped. It's disseminated valley fever. And I knew nothing about valley fever and what that was and what it would mean. And what basically it is, it's predominant in states. Well, now it's actually becoming a little bit more predominant in any state because of the drought and the soil being blown up. Or not blown up like dynamite, but from wind. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, it's a fungus. And it can be fatal. And I was just like, all right. He said, unfortunately, for her though, it never touched her lungs because it's a respiratory disease, and it stays in the lungs. Hers bypassed the lungs and attacked her bones and her GI system. And so our journey battling this disseminated valley fever began, and it was intense for years. Her IBD led to PLE, and PLE, it was a protein loss. She wasn't able to hold protein in her system. What's most interesting about her is when Fancy was diagnosed with something, she then got it. Or she was diagnosed with something, Fancy got it. It was just really interesting, the parallelisms that her and Fancy would share. Sometimes just a little like doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. So through the years, ever since 2016, I battled and tried to keep her alive, and I kid you not, between the valley fever and the PLE, and of course the flare-ups with the IBD. And every year I'd get blood work done, and every year I'd hear from the vets like, we're just amazed, because a dog that has PLE is normally skin and bones. And whatever you're doing, keep it up. And so I did. I kept it up and kept it up for years. And so, yeah, I mean, I know you have questions about what led up to this, so I had to share that history because it played into what happened. So this was our Sunday, November 12th. About this time, she's coming running down this, and we stop right here. And then some of you saw the video of her playing in the yard. And then that night, I had a Ring video, and I didn't share that, but she's running at 7 o'clock at night in the back before bedtime. Like everything. And they all run, and they all start running up the steps. And let me tell you, every night it was a racetrack up those steps. It was a game for her. She found it funny to run up the steps, do zoomies up and down the hallway, and it sounded like a herd of elephants when I was downstairs. And I usually had clothing on the floor that I was giving away. And she found this very humorous to take the clothing that I had on the floor for giveaway and rearrange it. Just, and then she'd run off. And Curly Sue and Mini Me would chase her up and down, up and down, and up and down. And little Munchkin would just stand there like, okay. But he'd stand at the top of the steps to make sure I was coming. Now, Ozzy Chewbacca, he was always in his crate at this point because Ozzy just didn't understand her. And Ozzy's Ozzy. So we go to bed. And she wakes me up about 9:30, and I thought she had to go out. And I take her out. She was a little off, but didn't seem like I needed to run her to the vet, just a little off. And I just thought, oh, well, maybe she kind of has, from all the zoomies, maybe she's a little lame. She goes outside, she whittles, and she wants to lay down on the patio, and I'm like, no, sleeping outside here is not an option. Come on, we're going in. And she did. She got up, she went up the steps, and like nothing was wrong. And then 12:30 Monday morning, I heard this noise that I've never heard before from her, and I got up and I turned the light on, and her back legs are just like out. And I picked up her gums, and they were pure white. I don't think I got dressed. I never got dressed so fast. And at the same time, I'm panicking because I don't know how I'm going to get a 60-pound dog down the steps. And I looked at her, I'm like, Sophie, I need you to go down the steps. Please, girl, just help me out. And she did. She did. And I'm like, okay, now I got to get you in the car. So I got her out in the garage, and I opened the back door, and she had enough energy to put her front legs up on the lift, and that was it. And I'm like, Mama's got you. Mama's got you. And I picked up her hind end, and I shimmied her into the car. And she laid on the floorboard, and the vet, in fact, see that building where it says mini storage, or that's what it says. The emergency vet is right on the other side. So that's how close and how quick I was able to get her to the ER vet. There was a cop at the red light, and I actually debated, do I cut in front of him? Do I flash? What do I do? And then the light turned green, and I didn't have to second guess what I was going to do. So I pull in a parking lot. I run out of the car. I'm crying hysterically. They come out with a gurney, and they get her out of the car, and they take her back, and they put me in a room, and they come in, and they tell me that blood is in her abdomen, that her spleen ruptured. And at first they thought maybe, at first without knowing her history, they thought cancer of the spleen. So they gave me a couple options of what could be done, and I'm like, I don't care, let's just get it done, I'll sign, just show me where to sign. And then the vet said, no, I want to talk to you about her quality of life. I'm like, her quality of life, are you kidding me? It's excellent. She just did Zoomies 5 hours ago with my fluff pack. Okay, the vet said, so here are the options, and this is the cost it's going to be. And it was a lot. And I said, I don't care, I'll figure it, just show me where to sign. And she goes, I want you to understand it's going to cost a lot with no guarantee. And I said, look, the more you delay me signing the agreement here, we're delaying treatment. I got this covered. I said, I'll figure, in my mind, I'm going to figure this out later. So they got her started on blood transfusion. And the vet comes and says, would you like to go back and see her? Absolutely. Which I was just kind of amazed that they left me go back into the triage, the area, and there were other dogs that were there that were in trauma. And I guess, I don't know, I tuned them out. I didn't show any like queasiness because there was a lot of emergency veterinarian evidence around. And I didn't quease, I didn't get sick or anything, and I just went right to her, and they had her in an oxygen chamber. And at this point, she's up. She's sitting up, and she's just looking around, and her ears are going back and forth. And I said, okay, Mama's here. And they opened up this like little window so I could reach in and pet her. I'm like, Mama's here. Mama's not going anywhere. I'm like, you got this, Sophie. You're so strong and beautiful, and I'm so proud of you. You're my little coyote slayer. You can do this. And I said, I'm not going anywhere. And I told the vet, I said, look, the vet said, if you want to go home and get some rest. I'm like, well, I don't think I'm going to get rest, but I'll go home. And I did. And at this point, it was probably about 1 o'clock. So I get home, the fluff pack is up. Like, what's going on? I leave them out. I just, like, at this point, I'm not going back to bed. There's no way. I'm pacing back and forth, and I decide to do a load of laundry. 1:15 in the morning, I decided to do laundry. And about 1:45, I get a call from the vet, and she said, I don't mean to alarm you. I'm like, well, that's a little too late. She said, but I did promise you I would call you with any updates or changes, and her heart rate now is 190. I said, I'm on my way. She said, take your time. I said, literally, I live less than 5 minutes away. I'm on my way. And I got there, and they again took me right back to the triage area, and she's laying on her right side, and now she's unresponsive. She's out. She's just eyes closed, ears pinned down, and I look up at the heart rate monitor, and now it's like 195, 199. Unfortunately, I knew enough that when it's one thing as an athlete to have that heart rate up, you also have a recovery. For her heart rate started at was 160 when I left, and it kept going up, and I knew there was a very good chance that she now was going to have cardiac muscle damage. And should she pull through this, you talk about diminished quality of life. I wouldn't be able to let her do her Zoomies. I wouldn't be able to come out here with her. And I was just like devastated. So the vet comes over and explains, she says, this is already our second bag of blood transfusion, and it's not looking good. And I said, are you telling me I need to start preparing myself for and she goes, yeah. And meanwhile, we already had surgeons on standby that we got her stable. We were going in for emergency surgery to remove her spleen. I authorized it. I didn't care how much it was going to cost. I had it ready. And I look up at the heart rate monitor, and now it's like 210. And I'm like, Sophie, come on, Mommy's here. You got this. Pull through, girlfriend. You need to fight this. And vet said, there's one more thing we can do. And I said, what's that? She said, we can pull her own blood out and do a transfusion. I said, but there isn't any time. I said, her heart rate now is at 220. And as I looked, Sophie's left ear's perked right up, and it started twitching back and forth. And right at that, I'm like, Sophie, you hear me? Mommy's here. I told you I wasn't leaving you. I'm right here. And they quickly opened the door for me instead of the little window, and they placed the mask by her nose. And I'm like, Mommy's here, and I'm hugging her and I'm petting her. And she lifted her head. She lifted her head, and she looked around, and then she looked right at me. And she had a tear coming down her left eye. And I wiped it away, and I'm like, come on, Coyote Slayer, you're so brave. Mommy's right here. She laid her head in my hand. That was it. And the vet looked at me. Her team was ready because they had the serum ready. And the emergency vet said, I've never experienced anything like that. She said, what an incredible gift you just were given. Now, at the time, I don't think it was a gift, and I'm still digesting that. And she said, what a gift that you were just given. She said, she woke up and looked right at you, and that she saw you as the last person in her life. She said that was amazing to watch. And I looked around, the whole team was just in tears. They go, we never saw anything like that. So, was she in pain? I know that's probably a question. Was she in pain? No. It happened so quickly that she would never experience pain. Thank goodness for that. And it was just that, so quickly. And, you know, as the days go on, I'm able to process this a little bit more. So I asked the vet. I actually even brought in her blood work for September because she had her dental, and I saw a lump, and had that removed, and her blood work was perfect. It was perfect. And again, the vets were like, we're just amazed. For a dog who has all of this going on with her for all these years, you've kept her blood work perfect, and you've kept her weight at 59.8 pounds. Just amazing. And so I showed the vet. I'm like, did I miss anything? Were there any signs? Did I miss anything? And the vet's like, no. And she shared her story with me that she had a golden retriever. And anyone who knows that breed knows it's a breed that's just notoriously known for cancer. And she said as soon as her golden retriever turned 7 years old, every 90 days she'd get an ultrasound on the spleen and the GI, because she knew what was, her breed was susceptible for this. And she said she had just completed an ultrasound, and 10 days later she was in the ER facing the same thing, and that the ultrasound came up clean. There's never a warning until it's too late. So I did share with the vet the 9:30 episode, how she woke me up and was a little off, but she had the strength. She went right up the steps and all that. I said, did I miss that opportunity to get her in here earlier? And she said, unfortunately, no. That you could have brought her in at 9:30 and it would have still had the same outcome. I shared with her the finickiness of her eating, that maybe I missed that, and she said no. And unfortunately, she said, well, all would have happened is the vets would have treated her for the IBD, since she had the history of it. They would have taken x-rays. They would have probably done an ultrasound if you had approved it. Everything still would have came up clean. And that all the treating with the IBD would have been more than likely Serenia, which treats nauseous and upset stomach. And you would have thought that it was that there was nothing, there were no telltale signs, there was nothing I missed. And I'm ever so grateful that you talk about lucking out of having an emergency vet with bedside manner, let alone compassion. I was just amazed. So I know that there were questions like, did I miss anything? Was she in pain? And I even spoke to several vets afterwards, like, was it cancer? And when I shared the history that she had disseminated valley fever for 8+ years, with IBD 8+ years, with the PLE, that she wasn't able to absorb protein and it just destroyed her gut, 8+ years, all vets were leaning towards that. The IBD, and I never knew this, can cause lesions on the spleen. Who knew? I didn't know. So like I said, I brought some things here. Unfortunately, I can't get the light, but I brought this because some of you that followed her page, you saw I had recently just took this photo of her and I, and this is where it was. You could see we were right here. We were right here in this spot. And I took the photo of how her and I were starting to match the gray. You know, she was like, "Ooh, Mom told me I'm starting to look like her. We're sweet and spicy ladies with our gray." I brought this one because this was taken spring down there in the canal. All that dead yellow is actually, they bloom into this, which causes pollen. I brought some of her fur. They gave me this. And then I can't get this to light up, and I wish I could, and I'm sorry. I tried to get it soon. Her one auntie gave her this, and it lights up, and it's just not working. I can't get it to light, of course, right? I did it at home, and it worked perfectly. I could just get it to light once to show you real quick. It's like, oh, come on. Just give me one light. Give me one light, please. There. You can see how it lights up. And I can't keep the phone to work. And I even charged the phone. Of course I did. I brought some of her paperwork here. And all along I thought her birthday was April 27th. It's actually April 26th. But when they took her in, she was 38.5 pounds. And that was at what weight she was back in 2015 when I was fighting all of the stuff and we didn't know why. But some of these comments here are hilarious because, let me tell you, it was so true. So these were her release papers, and it was said that Sophie had to be with a confident canine resident in her new home. Yep. And that she was most comfortable when she was on leash being handled by someone she knows and trusts. And I have to stop there because when I moved into the neighborhood 2015, she gained a new auntie in her life, Debbie. And I slowly was introducing Sophie to Debbie. And Sophie gave her a run for her money. Let me tell you. One day we were hiking and I said, "Here, just hold on to her leash." I said, "She's going to pick up on your energy. Whatever you do, stay calm, cool, collective, and all this." And Sophie had a tendency to back out like a horse, buck out of her harness. She was really, really good at that, and escape. And sure enough, she escaped. We were on a public hiking trail, and Sophie escaped and started taking off, and gave Debbie and myself a premature heart attack. And people were like do not chase her, do not chase her. And so I look ahead and she's probably right. Whoops, I'm sorry. I gotta go. She's probably around that corner, distance away from us. Probably that furthest bush down there. And I'm just very calmly walking to her, and I'm like, "Sophie Twinkle Star, you better sit now." Meanwhile, I'm panicking. I'm trying to remain calm and assertive and getting her to sit and stay. At the same time, I actually wanted to bust up laughing because the look on her face was like, na 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 na. I got away. You can't catch me. And I was just like, don't bust out laugh, Cal. Don't bust out laughing. Meanwhile, Debbie behind me is just like, you could tell, I could feel her energy. She was devastated. And so, I got her. Of course I got her. And she was just like, okay, what's my next adventure? What else can I do? But there for several years when we would go to Kanab was her favorite place. You talk about an animal spirit. If you never visited Kanab, Utah, put it on your bucket list. And by all means, definitely visit Best Friends Animal Society there. Amazing. You talk about God's country and being one with the earth. I can't explain it. Except for one time, we stayed at a hotel with Sophie. Big mistake. And Sophie was not happy, and Debbie was trying to walk her across the parking lot, and there she is trying that bucking scene again. Debbie got her to walk across. Through the years, Sophie adored her Auntie Debbie. Just because, just slowly introducing Sophie to other people around her. Then when I moved in this neighborhood, Sophie developed boyfriends, and let me tell you, she two-timed on all of them. All of them. She had a senior gentleman named Beau. She had a gentleman named Jackson, who was a Siberian Husky, and she really gravitated towards him because if you saw some of her rehab work and in puppy years, it was a Husky that she imprinted, and it was stuck in her mind. So every time she saw Jackson, game on. Those two played like nobody's business. Jackson then, several years later, had a brother named Fitzgerald. And same energy. When Sophie would see Jackson and Fitz, there were times I had to drop the leash because that's it. It's game on. And before anybody gets on me, their mother, Mary, and myself always made sure that all dogs were safe. Nobody was around, no traffic, nothing. Except for one time, there was one person that was going by, and Sophie's play, her style. If you know of a maple tree, those things that come down, as a kid, you'd put them on your nose and pretend you're Pinocchio. She would play and twirl in the air like this. The way she played was really interesting. But one time, one person was going by, saw Sophie doing her thing, and called the HOA, and didn't know who it was and who the dog belonged to. And the HOA person drove by one day, and she said, hey, got a report about a gray pit bull attacking 2 Siberian Huskies. Do you know who the owner is? Yeah, she's mine, and they were not attacking, they were playing. She goes, oh, I know your dog. You're right. Your dog wouldn't attack. I'm like, yeah. And so, that was right around the time that the Karens and if any Karen's watching, I really feel bad that you felt this whole thing. But I'm going to say just that ever since COVID, there are the people in the world now that have got to say something when it's really none of their business. That's how I'll put it. So she had those 2 boyfriends, and then another gentleman came in her life named Bodie, and Bodie was a pup, and Bodie was giving his mom, Barb, hi Barb, a run for her money and walking on a leash, and I volunteered. I'm like, hey, Sophie and I will walk Bodie together. And sure enough, Sophie would actually bring Bodie over here, and Bodie learned how to walk on the leash, and it was just amazing. Sometimes, though, she would meet Beau at one point on her walk. We'd get into the development. There was Jackson and Fitz, and she'd have her heyday. She'd be tired. We'd walk home. Bodie would wait for her in his courtyard, barking, insisting she come over and say hello. By the time I got home, she had 4 sets of boys on her. 4! And there was a lot of explaining to do in the house with the fluff pack. It was hilarious. But she had her boyfriends, and she had her favorites. Because when she learned to trust, she learned to trust. There was another episode, too, around 2016, after she was diagnosed and had her knee surgery. There were 2 pit bulls directly behind me that needed rescued out of a domestic violence situation. And I got them. And fast forward, one came to live with me for a little bit. Goofy dog. Karen, if you're watching, I love him dearly, but he was goofy. And Sophie would try to get him to play, and I think he was mixed with Pit Bull and Great Dane. And he just like, boom, ba-dum, ba-dum, and slobber like a St. Bernard. But he wasn't fast enough or matched her energy level, and she'd be like, okay, I'm bored with you. So, Karen, who adopted Yoda, good fit. Fast forward, then I brought in Yoda's sister to foster until I could find a home for her, and it was game on. And again, if you saw her playlist, you saw where her and Ella, or Bella, or Rosie, she had so many names in such a short amount of time, were playing. And those 2 would get it on and play like no business. Except for one time, Curly Sue was the instigator. The 2 of them got into a dispute over a toy, and no serious damage. It did require a vet visit, and all was well. But yeah, and unfortunately, it was on this trail too that you may recall Sophie was rushed to the emergency hospital because a dog owner left his dog out and was attacked Sophie. And I remember Sophie hiding behind me, and I protected her as much as I could. It was a cattle dog, so he was used to herding, and he just came behind us real quick, and I did everything I could, and I got her to the ER again. That one over there. And fortunately, not a lot of damage was done. Fast forward, about maybe 6 months ago, the same dog was out, comes running towards us, snarling. Sophie hid behind me. And she's just, and every now and then I'd look like peripheral vision, I would see her, and she'd stick her head like, oh, my mama gonna mess you up. My mama's got, watch it, little dog, my mama's got you. She's gonna get you. And I prevented another bite, and the dog owner did come out this time and get his dog. But it was hilarious how she stood behind me, just peeked around my legs, and just went, it was kind of like a cartoon, like, my mama gonna mess you up. She always looked to me to protect her, and it was funny, when walking her, people were so afraid of her, they'd part on the other side of the street. When I have the fluff pack, they want to come and pet. I'm like, no, they'll mess you up. Don't pet them. But I was actually her protector. And I was okay with that. But anyways, some more of her notes were, Sophie's very active and playful. She has lots of energy, and she will need daily mental and physical stimulation. That understatement of the year. Active doesn't even put close to it. Mental stimulation, that doesn't even put it close to it. She constantly was in everything, even the day of November 12th, Sunday. She's just out about getting things, tearing things apart, even after the walk over here. So it was just kind of hilarious that she wasn't slowing down. And then it said Sophie does best with a routine and consistency. And let me tell you, I couldn't deviate from this trail here. I couldn't take her like I tried to take her over there on that side. Towards her latter years, she was getting a little bit more comfortable. She most comfortable over here. She was okay there, except for when we would go the other way, when we saw the cattle and the horses. Then she got excited. But this was her go-to, and I knew for her quality of life, her contentment, her happiness, this was going to be our walk every day for the rest of her life. And so today, thank you for joining me on this walk with her. And so now I'm going to pack up. Just stay with me because we're going to walk back together too. I know that there's probably other questions or comments, and I'm sorry, trying to do all this and hold the phone and hold papers and get everything together. It's kind of hard, you know. Doesn't get it any easier. But yeah, hopefully too you have some memories of her that you'd like to put in the comments, photos, videos for those that were in her life. Put them in there. If you walked with us, you went on road trips, and interesting enough, I had a trip to Kanab planned. We were going December 9th through December 17th. I actually had a trip planned last year for Sophie and Driving Miss Fancy, and it was in November, and unfortunately, snow hit, and I had to cancel it. And for some of those, you may recall, Fancy was rushed to the ER 2 days before Christmas Eve. Interesting timing on that, because 2 days before Christmas Eve is when Sophie came into my life in 2012. I just thought of that. Whoa. I just thought of that. But anyways, that's when she was being diagnosed with kidney disease. And never got to Kanab for her or Sophie. So I said that this year I was getting to Kanab for Sophie, and I said to Debbie, I don't know, I can't put my finger on it. I gotta get her this year. I gotta get her up this year. Even with snow, I'm going. One way or the other, I'm going. I am not missing this trip. I just had this intuition, and I can't explain it. Unfortunately, I was about 45 days too late. And maybe looking at it now, though, maybe I wasn't too late. Maybe it was supposed to happen the way it was, because I can't even imagine losing another dog in Kanab. For those that have been with me long enough following Mr. Magoo, he passed away in Kanab. And to lose Sophie in Kanab, probably, yeah, that probably would have set me over the edge. Like, there hasn't been enough loss this year. Losing Fancy Easter. Had a job transition over the summer, and now that wasn't easy. And then now Sophie. So yeah, this was the next best thing that I could give her every day, other than living in Kanab. This is where we'd be walking back, and I'd be telling her, good girl, Sophie, look at you. And she'd be like trotting up ahead. She'd stop, look around, make sure I'm coming. And if I was too far back, she'd come right back, stay by my side, wait for me to pick up the pace to get home. So, yeah. I'm still numb. There's some days I feel like I'm walking in quicksand. Oh, this is hard. You know, because in my mind, you know, they're always going to live forever. We know that's not true, though. But I really need to stop and just really embrace the fact that I kept her alive for 8 years. And some people know what I was going through. A lot of you do not. Only just my sister and Debbie truly knew what I was going through with her every single day. It was almost every day. It was almost guaranteed once a week. Battling something. Whether it was the valley fever or her IBD or the PLE. And I was exhausted. And I'd be like, and then we'd go in remission. Because that's how I would call it. And then she'd be fine for a couple days or maybe a month and back right at it. So I really need to embrace that. Just like all my other dogs, we defied the odds. We beat the odds when life expectancy wasn't supposed to be. Or I should say she outbeat the life expectancy because the vets gave me a couple times some grave warnings, which I never shared because I didn't want it out in the universe. I wanted it to be positive, and that she was. And she was brave and she was strong and she got it. She beat everything. So yeah. So I need to embrace that, and I do need to embrace that I've never had a dog that looked at me with a tear like that. I've never experienced that and I think the emergency vet was right, that it was definitely a gift. Something that I'll just be able to hold and cherish for the rest of my life. Everybody's like, well, you're going to get another dog. You know, ever since the passing of Mr. Magoo, then Driving Miss Fancy, and now Sophie Twinkle Star, I have no desire. No desire. I still have the fluff pack. I have the 4. There's Mini Me. Woo, Mini Me. He's going to be 13. And then there's Munchkin. He's going to be 14 in a couple weeks. He's not. He was also, some of you may call, he was also diagnosed with valley fever about, now it's going on 2.5 years. His did not disseminate. The fungus stayed in his lungs, and we caught it so early because I was just like, something's not right. And I got him to the vet, tested, and sure enough, valley fever. And so for those that may not know, I think I started it and then just got derailed, but valley fever here is really a fungus disease that when the wind blows, the fungi that's in the soil gets tossed in the air, and then you breathe it. And in Sophie's case, she somehow or another it skipped her lungs and went right into her bone and GI. It's funny. If anybody has seen the HBO show The Last of Us, the opening scene talks about how fungus destroys the body and then these people go into a zombie state. But I remember watching that scene and thinking, oh my gosh, this is what I live with Munchkin and Twinkle Star here, with the fungus destroying their body. It's a nasty, nasty disease. And I don't wish it on anyone, because the healing process is nonstop, to be honest with you. It comes and goes. At any rate, so if you visit any desert states and it's windy, you start to develop a cough and a fever and loss of appetite, ask them to test. Even if you bring pets, ask them to test. Take x-rays of your lungs. And unfortunately, there were a lot of cases of valley fever that went incorrectly diagnosed during COVID because they thought it was COVID. And so the symptoms are similar, not the same, just similar. And so you always ask to be tested, and especially if in your area there's starting to be news about this disease called valley fever due to drought and not enough rain, and the soil gets loosened, and then the spores go in the air. So now we're about right halfway point when my Monday through Friday, but this would be the weekend walk here, her off leash. And I still don't know if I'm ever going to walk this path again. I'll never bring the fluff pack because, as you can see, it's remote. And I'm sure there are coyotes down there right now, camouflaged. That's why sometimes I would like walking here in the dark, because I would have that flashlight and I could see the little eyes. Started off this morning, I didn't bring the flashlight because I can't carry everything plus the flashlight. So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna walk a little bit in the dark, and it was okay because it was starting to become dawn and then sunrise. Well, hopefully you just stay with me as I get to the end here of the trail, and we stop, we visit Sophie's little bush, and maybe the bunnies will be out. Wasn't expecting to see the owl and the hawk this morning. I'd like to think that was a sign that she was here. I know she was here. One way or another, she was with me. She was with us. But anyways, going back to where I get some other dogs, the answer is no. No. Mini-Me, Munchkin, Curly Sue. Curly Sue's my little sensitive one right now. Man, I could tell. I could tell there's a rainstorm coming before it's even visible. Like any hint of it's coming. Like I get migraines from the barometric pressure. Her sensitivity to the storms is even more of it on par than my migraines. Maybe she was a meteorologist in her former life. I don't know. And then there's Ozzy Chewbacca. Oh, Ozzy. He's a handful. He is Mini-Me magnified 1,000 times. I didn't think that was possible. What was really interesting is watching Sophie adjust her play style to meet the energy of the fluff pack. You may recall how she played with Fancy. She would entice Fancy to play, but ever so gently. And she knew that. She knew how to get Fancy to play. She knew how to stay in. And do you see the size of that hawk? Wow. I'm not sure who enjoyed these walks more, Sophie or myself, because, yeah, I'm here in the city, in the urban, but at the same time I get a little touch of nature. At any rate, she would adjust her play energy with Sophie. Or no, sorry, Sophie would adjust her play energy with Fancy. She'd get Fancy to play. She'd run tight circles around Fancy so Fancy could constantly be there in contact with her, so Fancy would know where she is. Then there was Mini-Me and Curly Sue. First it was Mini-Me and Mr. Magoo. Mr. Magoo, she also knew instantly how to play with him. Again, same gentle touch. She knew he was an older gentleman. But Mini-Me, she knew he was a Spitfire, and she'd match that energy to match his personality, and he'd fall for the bait. Let me tell you, each and every time she would do something that would just get him going, and it was zoomies around the yard. Then she would like to dig holes, which I really do believe is how she picked up the valley fever. And I would go, Sophie, no, stop that. Mini-Me learned. They both learned. Sophie knew that as soon as she would dig, I'd be like, Sophie, and Mini-Me would pick up on the Sophie, and he'd run over and bark at her like, don't you dare. But she took that as game on. That's the dog that attacked her. That's the dog that she learned to hide behind me. And that is the dog that she not only would hide behind me, but peek out from behind and go, "My mama gonna mess you up." And I would. Now, I didn't hit the dog, but I certainly would use a stern voice, and I didn't care if the owners were hearing me or not. And they did. But I'd be like, "No, leave it." And it would actually be a little deeper and louder than that, but anyways. But that was the dog. It's funny, when he bit her, it wasn't really like a puncture wound bit. It was more like he did a flap of skin and pulled it back. Never saw anything like that. Okay, so anyways, Mini Man, she knew how to push his buttons. She also knew how to push my buttons. And when she wanted attention, she'd push that button on me, which then I would go, "Sophie, no." And then that would alert Mini Me, and game on. Game on. Along came Curly Sue, and Curly Sue quickly picked up on this whole game. The two of them would chase her around the yard when I would try to discipline Sophie. And then they would stop and they'd go in the house. But Sophie quickly learned to get them to come back out to play. She would stand at the patio door and bark, and they'd come running. And then she'd go around the yard at 1,000 miles an hour again. I swear, as fast as she went. Did she have greyhound in her? I mean, that girl was fast, wicked fast. It's still unknown what breed she really was. Vet didn't think she had. She said it's possible she had pit bull, but she was leaning more towards a lab mix. And then she did share that lab mixes have a tendency to have a higher rate of ruptured spleens as well. There, the Texas Blue Lacy, which let me tell you, that's possible because she embraced this. And when there were coyotes, she thought they was playtime. A couple times, though, we would see javelinas. And if you're not familiar with a javelina, just think of a wild boar, only aggressive. Wild boars are aggressive when you pin them. These they're actually rodents. I think they're rodents. Anyway, I call it the spawn of Satan. They're blind, almost deaf. They don't see and hear very well, so let me put it that way, and aggressive. And one day, we were coming here. It was about 6 a.m. in the morning. It was winter. And I had the light on. So I entered way up there. I had the light down here. And I saw red eyes. Not like eye reflection from a coyote or a cat. Red eyes. I'm like, wow, that's odd. Never saw those before. And I didn't even know what it was. But they were glowing red. And I was just like, bleh. So her and I come up to the corner here. We come on the trail. And it was right about here where those two bushes are. I heard rustling. I quickly turned the light around because it was down in there. I was pointing. And I see a javelina. Well, what does she do? She wants to chase it. She wants to hunt it. I'm like, oh, maybe you do have Texas Blue Lacy in you. Holy hun, it was game on. Holding her back. And when I realized what it was, that's where I came up with the spawn of Satan because of those glowing red eyes. And I saw javelinas down here with her a couple times. One time I was on the phone with my sister, Colleen. I'm like, I gotta go. There are javelinas. And Sophie it's like game on. And she's just like, let me down there, lad. And she's whining and wants him. I'm like, quiet. I slowly had to back her out of there because she was just ready to go after him. So I've had vets say that she may have small trace of pit bull. They saw more lab in her. Some said Texas Blue Lacy. Had a couple of vets that even said they thought she was more of the, I am going to mess this breed up, and I apologize for anyone who owns the breed. The whine, and that's how I'm going to go, because I'm not even going to try to say it. that as well. At the end of the day, does it really matter what she was? Nope. She was our Sophie Twinkle Star. She was a shining star. That's all that counts. And I had a reading done on her in 2015. I just found it the other day. And she was taught, the person who did the reading was saying how all she wanted to do in life was just love, love, love. And then I found I had another one down on 2016, and the biggest message that Sophie wanted me to know was that I could now trust her. And I even told the person that did the reading, I'm like, you had no way of knowing. But I started doing off-leash work with her, and she's doing amazing. So, that's the breed that she was. She was a lover, a loving breed. That she came into this life and she just wanted to love, love, love. And boy, did she love, love, love. She thought she was the fluff pack. And in her little costume, her 60-pound costume, she'd jump on that bed and she'd try to sit on my head like the rest of them. I'm like, Sophie, it's not happening. During the wintertime, talk about a nice little heater. Summer was brutal. But she was a loving breed. That's all we need to know, that she was the loving, shining star. So, as I come to the end of this trailhead here, for lack of a better term, I thank you for joining me on Sophie Twinkle Star's walk that her and I did every day, even when it was raining, except for lightning. A couple times I got caught in a storm with lightning. We would dash in somebody's house under the cover, and yeah, that probably didn't look well, but I'm like, I'm sorry, it's lightning. But she didn't mind. She did not mind walking in the rain. Of course, we were out here in the day, when it was dark, when it was hot, when it was pleasant, and when it was cold. So this is it. This is where we'd stop and we'd walk home, and that's when her energy changed when I got here. She always wanted to be out there. I don't know. I may come back out a couple times. I don't know, but right now I'm not. I will read all comments and answer questions when I get back home. Again, thank you so much for being part of her life all these years, and thank you for joining and walking this journey with me, with her. Love to all of you. Have a wonderful day.